Hi, my name's Jordan Marshall and I'm Special Projects Editor at Building Design Magazine. I really hope that you're all seeing me right now, and in the hope that you all are, I'm so sorry for the slight delay in starting today's broadcast. We did start at the scheduled time and we've unfortunately had a platform error, which we hope is now corrected. We have a great session for you today, and I'm going to now get back into it as quickly as possible so that we're not taking up too much extra time. Just a reiteration, the topic is how is AI impacting the architecture sector? I'll introduce our speakers as we go this time, just to try and get through it as quickly as possible. So our first speaker is Chris Williamson, Chair and Founder at Weston Williamson and Partners. Chris, I'll hand things over to you.
Okay, thank you. If you can drive my slides, please. Just go back to the beginning. So this first slide. So I've always been fascinated by my particular area of expertise for the last 40 years has been how we travel in and around our cities and the effect that that has on the cities and the development associated with safe, efficient, well-designed public transport. So these images, this one, the next one, and the one after, they're all taken. So that one's out of order. But they're all taken from 30s, 40s, 50s images of what we think our cities are going to look like. So these would now be done by AI and generated by AI. We've got some amazing young architects in our office that do the most amazing things, but in the same way as these are, it's really is just a tool, and we have to look at what is possible in technology, which these images presume to show in the future. But it has to be tempered by the question, why is it necessary and how is it desirable? Just because we can do something, just because we can show something on AI, doesn't mean to say that it is desirable. If we go to the next slide, please. So I wrote this article a few years ago, and the basic premise is that we as a people are much the same size, have the same emotions, have the same feelings, we die of the same diseases, we still love and hate in the same way as we did 2,000 years ago. If you skip the next slide and go to the one after. So this is Neuli's plan of Rome. And we still like these spaces. We feel comfortable in squares, avenues, because our eyesight, our perception is still the same. The next slide shows the hand of Corbusier. And the reason for showing this is just because we can build like this, we've got the technology and we've got the capability of doing this, doesn't say that it's the right thing to do. And I think some of the things that we are now capable of with AI, with prefabrication, with robotics, just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing to do. We have to question why we're doing it. Next slide, please. So this is an image by Helmut Jacobi of Milton Keynes, central Milton Keynes in the 1970s. So this was how, when I started in college, this was how we presented, with hand drawing, leaving things out and making evocative images. If you go to the next slide, please. But what we've done to our cities by reliance on the motor car, the next slide shows the effect on our cities, and the next slide is the physical health and the mental health effects that has. If you go to the next slide, please. So we've designed a city which has a public transport at the very heart of it, and it's a radial city with no cars, no private transport. Everything is automated vehicles. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I think the future can be a green and pleasant place. And if we use technology wisely and ask why we're doing something, we'll get enormous benefits on the way that our cities look and feel. If you go to the next slide, please. So this shows this is a hand-drawn scheme, and it shows a connection to an underground system and a lift which we're working with on ThyssenKrupp that goes horizontally and vertically. So it allows a lot of possibilities. So I think that AI is a fantastic tool if we guide it and if we are in control of it. There are some images which are, I don't know if it's the next one, the next slide, but there are some images which show that. So this is a building in Singapore. So what we're capable of is beautiful green buildings, and I think that will be the future of what we, if we use technology wisely, that's what we will end up with. I don't buy into the dystopian Blade Runner image of the future. Next slide, please. So this is a computer-generated image of Paddington Station, and this was done over 10 years ago, and it's now realized and people are enjoying it. Next slide, please. But then this is taken off the internet. I'm fascinated by AI images. I mean, this looks eminently buildable, but you have to look at what it is and what is it doing. We have the capability to look as though we're designing these most amazing shapes. If you go to the next one, please. But you know, what is the function of it? It might be beautiful, but you have to question what we're using AI for, apart from amazing images. If you go to the next one, please. We're using AI to demonstrate what might be possible and to show seductive images, but they're not necessarily always buildable. Next one, please. And you know, cantilevers, glass walls supporting a roof, that they might look convincing, but they're not to an architect. And we have to use the same tools. Going back to the Helmut Jacobi drawing, he used a pencil. This is using fantastic imagery capability, but not necessarily convincing if in the hands of the right person that's questioning what the tools are doing. Next, please. So yeah, there are some amazing seductive images out there, but they're not always achievable. Next one, please. So then these are generated in our office, looking at the experience of a new city. If you just whiz through these every couple of seconds, how we travel and the possibilities of travel and how that might affect our cities, and the prompts that the AI tools use. I mean, and how we actually generate the images. You know, it's so quick and so convincing. It does create an amazing fantasy world if you just go through these slides every couple of seconds, to create images of the future which look really convincing. But I think what I'm trying to say is that AI gives us amazing possibilities of showing new ways of working. I would just make a plea that it has to be used in the hands of the right people that edit those possibilities to make it an interesting place. So this one, for example, if you just hold on this, for example, this is not an AI image, it's a computer-generated image of Broadway in Manhattan. So we're using images to show what is possible in the future, but it's carefully edited and carefully thought out, of traffic calming, of shared surfaces, and making the city an interesting place. I think in the hands of the right designers, AI is an incredibly powerful and an amazing tool. But if you go to the next one, these show uh, how you can use those tools to your advantage, but not if they're not carefully used, you end up with a lot of things that seem to be coming out of the Middle East now that just look unachievable, with sort of 50-meter cantilevers that you wonder how is that going to be built. So they might look seductive, and just because we can draw it doesn't mean to say we can build it. And even if we can build it, we have to question why, because we our psyche, our temperament, and our physical and mental capability isn't changing as much as fast as AI is. So thank you very much. Let's kick things off. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. That's a great way to kick things off. And to our audience, thank you so much for sticking with this. There's still so many of you on, so please send through those questions at any time. We will still try and get through as many of those as possible. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Martha, who's our next speaker, Martha Sagari from Foster & Partners.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can all see my screen. Can you please verify?
Yeah, that's perfect, Martha.
Fantastic. So, hello, my name is Martha Tsegeri. I'm very happy to be working for Foster Partners for the past 18 years, and particularly because I'm working in a firm that takes into consideration technology very, very seriously for a long time and allows us to use it in fascinating ways. I'm the head of the Applied R&D department at Foster Partners, which is a group dedicated at cutting edge research. And what we do revolves around a lot of different categories of things. But the particular question that we ask ourselves looking into all these technologies is what innovations exist in the future that can help us reshape and optimize our industry today. And the reality is that throughout time, a lot of things have changed in our industry, but also a lot of things have remained the same. And all these changes have been brought mainly by technology. And change and technology can be challenging, but also it can have unpredictable consequences. Like the iPhone, it's a technology nobody knew needed, and now not only it is used by everyone, but has also reshaped the way people interact by the establishing the rise of social media. And so the question is, I think, what will the consequences of disruptive technologies like AI be in our industry? And to set that a little bit more in perspective, we just need to say that this is not a technology that's going to go away. The rate of adoption, the amount of data, and the rise in computational power are such that are making this technology something that is going to completely reshape our future as we go along. We're seeing adoption that allows for this software to be reaching 1 million users in less than an hour. We're seeing computational powers that has increased by a factor of 100 million in the past 10 years, and an amount of data that's training these systems that can be as big as the entire internet. And yet, every time we're talking about AI, particularly in our industry, we keep talking about large language models like ChatGPT, or even image generating models and diffusion models like DALL-E and Midjourney. And it's it's interesting and fascinating and fantastic that we can do all these things nowadays, and that they're at such an easy grasp away, literally a phrase away. But the reality is we need to think beyond that. Because right now we're looking into AI in architecture as something that can create pretty images. And that is only scraping the surface. And it's actually putting us away from what is really going to happen. We already have models that can go from language to movie or language to 3D model and mesh. And this is going to completely reshape the way that the industry works, because it's going to go from language to entire model, and it's already doing that. So I think everybody keeps asking if AI will replace architects eventually. I don't think that this is necessarily the case. I think that we can use AI in order to augment our creativity and problem solving capacity rather than be replaced. And the reason why I think is because all of this has happened before and it will happen again. Whether you're a Peter Pan fan or a Battlestar Galactica fan, you know this as a fact. This is nothing different but a turning point akin to the creation of the printing press or the splitting of the atom, or in relation to our industry, the introduction of CAD. But in order to harness AI's power, we first need to be able to control what powers it, which is data. And we have quite a lot of data during the design, construction, operation of a project. So I would like to take you through some ideas of what we have been doing at Foster and Partners around these three areas and AI. So when you're talking about design, and we keep talking about images, right now, for example, in the office, we have the capability of running through distributed computing hundreds of thousands of options on either building or urban developments within a matter of hours. And not only running these options, but running also an array of simulations on the back end of these options and understanding how well each option performs while doing optimization and analysis. So imagine that even us at this stage, in a matter of hours, can produce a solution space of thousands, hundreds of thousands of options and their performance that can be used as a data set to start predicting different configurations to the designer. So these are things that can be done even now if we wanted to. And there are other things, other facilitations that AI can do that people not really think, but they're low hanging fruit. For example, we started working with AI in 2017. We started working with AI during the rise of Pix to Pix and all these deep learning models. And at the time, we were using them to develop surrogate models. A surrogate model is a model that can predict an analysis that would otherwise take minutes or hours in a matter of seconds. We use that for spatial and visual connectivity analysis, which we know scales up really difficulty and takes a long time to run in big floor plates. And not only we created the data set, a synthetic data set to train our system, but then we created an inference API directly within Rhino that allows our designers, as they design, to be able to run predictions of this analysis, which are not 100% accurate. They can be 95, 98% accurate. But at that time, it really gives you a good understanding of how to make the right decisions early on in the design process. We have been starting looking into large language models even before ChatGPT came along, and we have built our own FNP Ask engine that can, for example, can go through different databases. Right now, you see it going through our design guidelines. You can ask natural language questions, and then you get the answer based on our guides, and also where you can find it in our guides with enough security that this is not um, the computer is not improvising, but it's actually creating enough reliance to know that the result that you're getting is the actual result that you would get were you to search the guides. And we're extending that into doing searches for our design and our models in our huge data set databases in relation to drawings. We have been using AI for operational and data insights and trying to understand how we can use now business data in order to optimize our performance and processes, but also as a design assist. The first trial we did with machine learning models and deep neural networks were in 2018 when we were looking into passively actuated materials and how we can predict layering for these materials just by telling the engine what the deformed output material should be, and delving then into other technologies like diffusion models, but not in the same use as with Midjourney, uh, being online, trying to make a query, retrieving an image, but mostly trying to see how you can do this directly on the models as you design. So this is when Stable Diffusion Midjourney came out around a year and a half ago now. And this is where we are now, where again we're using plugins directly within Rhino, where not only it can allow us to visualize things directly through the designs that we created, so not having the computer imagine our designs, but actually using as a design assist on top of our designs, but also in a way where these are being run through our servers, so IP and copyright is really protected. And extending it into a collaborative tool where you can still do a lot of exploration, but you do it in our machine learning app, which is a platform that many people from the office can contribute. They can run their own prompts and they can compare with each other. This is just a small taste of all the things that the AI is doing right now. And this is also some of the Gen AI things that exist out there. So a lot of the things that we're discussing about massing creation, performative analysis, layouts, even drawing documentation and content compliance happening directly through AI are things that are already happening. There are applications out there that can assist with those things, as well as applications that can assist with constructions. Robots are going to come in construction. We have used Spot on site. What happens if you start having Atlas on site? What will that do in terms of having an intelligent robot helping you as you construct? But what also happens right now with applications that go from cost estimation to scheduling to even autonomous piling system already existing and being run and driven by AI. And of course, with operation and the advent of digital twins, there are so many things that we can say around how operational data can drive not only our design decisions for the future, but also particularly how it can drive the system itself within a building to become more cognitive for the people who are using it. And of course, another set of different applications that do exist out there today that use AI on an operational level. So I want to wrap up by saying that I don't think AI will replace us. It's rather going to assist us. But in order to do this properly, we need to ensure that we set up some rules of engagement similar to the three laws of robotics from Asimov. And we need to understand also the dangers that exist out there that have to do with data contextualization where it comes to our data sets, uh, legal frameworks and regulations, IP and copyright considerations, how we deal with that in education, embedded biases that are unconsciously within the data that we use, ethics, and of course the question of job and upskilling and how this is going to be progressed either through us or through the government. And yeah, I would like to finish with that, hopefully within the time frame I've got. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Martha. That was another great presentation. Always great to hear from you. So much insight there. We've already got questions coming through, which would be great to cover off with all of you in the Q&A. Next up, I would like to introduce Natalie Rosenweig, who is the director at Name Architecture, who is going to share her thoughts next.
Hi, thank you, Jordan, and thanks for having me. Can you see my my screen?
Yep, that's perfect.
That's great. So I'm going to discuss similar topics, I suppose, to what you've heard so far, but from the perspective of a smaller architectural practice as such. I'm the founder and director of Name Architecture. We're a practice that is based both in Paris and London, with the group of a multinational people working with us in the office, and we've one of our strong identity is how design and defines the identity of our projects and signatures. So it was very interesting for us from a very early stage to question how AI would affect our practice. And beyond the question of whether AI will replace our jobs, which I think was addressed before and we'll address shortly again, I think the question we ask ourselves today is why we think that architects should care about AI. And there's three strong elements that we consider. So one is the transformative impact that it will have on the architectural design process. Of course, the implications it will have in sustainable design, and the potential that it has to enhance our creativity and innovation in the industry at all stages of a design. So we see this really as a paradigm shift that is driving innovation and shaping the future. And as such, we think there are three domains in which the industry and how we at Name are already are adapting to these tools. And this is, first of all, in the practice of architecture itself, within the relationships that we have with our clients. And for me personally, very importantly, the question of education of architects in the future, and I'll touch upon that again a bit later. But on the right here, you can see a level of a list of elements in which we have already adapted and are testing AI tools in our workflow. So how do we explore AI at Name and in the context of a small to mid-sized firm? What we do is we hold what we call Name Talks, which are regular sessions in the studio where we explore the tools, we questions, we put forward ideas as with a team all together. There's one person in the office that drives this the research and is constantly looking and getting up to date with what is happening. We share these tools and test them with the rest of the studio, and do this through monthly meetings where we assess them. We set up challenges to ourselves, for example, to test the limits of the tool. So recently we've done a competition where we decided to design everything through AI tools only, from the massing to the layout to of course the image generation and the layouts of panels themselves, to test how smoothly these tools run together and how we can control them or not. And we participate quite a lot in training and AI workshops with the team. One additional element that we've focused on quite a bit is a podcast that we launched a few months ago, which is called Designing Futures. And I'll come back to that a bit later in the presentation, but that is really a tool for us to discuss this adoption of AI and what it means for the creative industry at large. So I think, of course, we are augmenting our design capabilities with AI, and we are far beyond now this question whether it will be replacing us as designers, but rather really considering this as a collaborative means of working. And what I think is notable is very much this shift in how we communicate with machines. So before that, we use the machine to create, to adapt, to visualize our designs. But now there is really this transactional relationship with it. And that is where I think our role as creatives is interesting and has to be questioned. What do we bring with our design thinking that is different than, let's say, what a software engineer brings when he develops these tools? And how do we as architects and designers also guide the development of these tools in the future? And those are important questions for us. So, as I said, in the office, we use them through various moments in our workflow, through at the stage of conceptualization, where at the beginning AI can be a companion for our design to both analyze the brief and create some initial ideas. That is also significantly reducing the time and cost while enhancing our creativity at these early stages. We use it a lot in terms of the image production to test things like materials, the feeling of a particular place, the atmospheres that we want to create. And these are initial images that we generate to as original points of references or inspirations that guide us in our work. We then what we're starting to develop now is to see how we custom train AI models to our work, to our design signature as such. We don't necessarily have the capacity in-house to write new scripts for the moment, but we are using and testing what's out there. So here, for example, what you see, and these are very early stages, but on the top right, we feed the model with a series of our signature projects and design as such, and then test the tool to see with prompts what it generates as an architectural language that is supposedly aligned with our distinctive style. We also use it very much into planning and analysis at the level of master planning. The tools that help us relate quickly and quickly calculate massing, square meterage, and all the elements that are implied in a master plan that can influence and to which the design can adapt, and moving on from there to testing those on actual layouts. And this again is very much a kind of a dialogue that we're having with the machine. We, of course, talked a lot in the previous presentations about visualization tools. We're developing now more and more the relationship between the actual visualization and a 3D model that adapts to one another, and this is what we're seeing developed more and more. But also thinking how we're using videos and animation and AI tools around these to actually add some post-production to some of our work. So for example, if you see the render here on the lower right, putting this into an animation tool where we can change the daylight atmosphere and animate the image itself to create more interaction from a render or a photograph, and give a feel to the context of a particular project, both for ourselves and then also as we discuss this and review this with clients. Of course, sustainable design is one key factor that has become much more democratized now that these tools are available to everyone. And this influences us a lot in the early studies where these tools have now become accessible, and we can quickly simulate daylight and heating our cells, wind analysis, and improve the energy efficiency of our designs. And lastly, I think that the client engagement is one very important topic for us, where there's this ability to generate more visualization enables a better grasp of the design for the clients, more engagement. There's a level of conclusive reasoning as well, where the analysis and simulations provide arguments and a context to discuss the design decisions. And a question of timely delivery, where we do get quick results and can streamline the process and do that with a much smaller team. Now, of course, these are a lot of the positives that we've shown with AI, but there are, of course, drawbacks and dangers that are posed. Like any innovation, there's a resistance and a necessary questions that are to be asked. What our responsibility is. We've mentioned a few in the previous presentations, but I think a few that are quite important for us is this: the questioning is this generation of too many options. What is that doing to us when we have the possibility of generating so many images and so many layouts and so many masking options? How does that affect our work, our ability to judge and to decide? Because I think as architects, one of our main roles as well is to make decisions and have a judgment on something. How does that affect it? We've discussed security issues of privacy and securities, ethical implications, a certain homogenization of design. And of course, the job displacement. So these are all questions that we ask together with this. This paradigm shift, and we find it very interesting, I think, to really dwell and think about what this meant in the past. So this resistance that we might have to these changes, how were these perceived in the past? Were there, we question, were there inventions and shifts in the past that had such an immense effect on the architectural profession, on the construction industry? It was mentioned before the invention of the printing press, but we could also mention the invention of descriptive geometry as a way of communicating, drawing, and basing a whole industry on a particular way of a language and a way of visualizing information. The Industrial Revolution, of course, in terms of construction and what that meant as well in the way that we design our structures, and the invention of computer technologies as a whole. And so the podcast that we set up is actually a tool for us to ask these questions. We delve into these with insightful interviews where we interview people in the industry that are questioning this paradigm shift and that share their experience with it, and who really are actively participating and contributing to the development in this field. So we've so far had episodes with Helen Armstrong, who really discusses this transactional relationship with the machines that we have, and how our roles as designers is important in this advent of this new technology. We've discussed with Emmanuel Coe the implications that AI has in the academic world, and how he's setting up the first AI course for architectural students. and an interesting discussion with Lara Belkind as well on echoes of the past and how past transformations are mirrored maybe by this this new shift. So I'd invite you all to subscribe to the podcast, and we have many more interesting topics that are coming up. But for us, this is really a way to be part of the conversation, to act on this, and participate in the development of what AI is providing for the future in the architectural industry. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Natalie. That was another really insightful presentation. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Pablo Zamorano, Head of Geometry and Computational Design at Heatherwick Studio. Pablo, if I could ask you to start sharing your presentation, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen now.
That's all perfect.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Pablo Zamorano, and I have the luck to work at Heatherwick Studio. Heatherwick Studio, for the people that is not very familiar with us, it's a 250 people strong design studio based in London. With projects around the world. We don't particularly focus on a specific kind of scale or location or project type. And that means that there isn't much for us that we can repeat over and over again. By the way, there is none of these images that you're seeing here is generated by AI. But everything we do in the studio, it's been always kind of a relationship between design, critical thinking, and technology. And we understand that we will not be able to realize any of our kind of designs or ideas if it wasn't because we engage with different design technologies. And so hopefully today we will be looking at how we use some of this AI tool, and maybe more importantly, discuss a little bit about which ones can be actually useful. For the past year and a half or so, we've been quite focused on trying to understand where AI can be beneficial to us, and across different kind of areas related to design and what we do, we've been exploring, testing, using, and also developing a few tools that help us kind of leverage the technology. Most of the people here, I suppose, are familiar with tools like Midjourney, things that appear to be magical the first time you interact with them, but after a while they can not only become a little bit boring, but also quite generic. So there isn't much kind of differentiation between any type of kind of input you provide, and this has been the case across multiple different platforms that we've tested. And so for us, it was very important to find a way to use AI in our own way. And so in the beginning, we were just incorporating some kind of models, open models like Stable Diffusion, for instance, into our kind of preferred design tools like Rhino, and in 2D and in 3D. But we also realized very quickly that what was really difficult here was to actually control these tools and try to use them in a way that we were not just kind of spending hours, trying to find the right image, but actually guiding this towards where they needed to be. And we also obviously understood that, through the almost 30 years that we have as in history in the studio, there is quite a bit of information that we can leverage to come up with our own models. And so if we have an image, and we understand what an image is, and we can describe it, and we use, multiple of these images, to train in these models, all of a sudden, we know how to actually think, or at least provoke the design process from our own kind of background. And so in different ways that we're using them now is, for instance, going from kind of the sketches to images, but not only kind of a random image, but based on kind of our own projects, or simple drawings based again on our own previous designs to kind of rethink, what we are kind of approaching in terms of design kind of intuition, but also for visualization. So if we want to kind of base a really basic kind of Rhino massing into something that looks like our own kind of visualization. In this case, watercolors. We can do that within a minute. But we can also review or revise previous kind of designs and see them in different ways. Through kind of a larger color palette or different materials, or in a highly customized ways. So we can start with a model that we provide, and we can use something that we call kind of multi-style referencing to, let's say, use one part of the image based on one of our custom libraries, and then kind of have that part of the image segmented responding to that, and then maybe the lower portion responding to some other ideas that we had in the past, about kind of direct human interaction at ground floor level, and then combine them together. And because we can call different parts of our library, we can generate multiple images that we know are quite targeted to what we will be expecting, and not only based in one design or one type of prompt, but actually using our own kind of already predefined libraries. And again, I think for us it's quite important to bring all these new, let's say, tools into our design workflows, and being able to use them directly from kind of our preferred tools. But we're also using them for other purposes, like training. This is from our BIM team, and they have been using kind of GPT models or LLMs basically to tailoring their training or their kind of provision to better understanding of BIM tools across the studio using this technology. And we're trying to get this to the next level for kind of having the ultimate kind of Studio Insight tool through our own internal wiki. Now, one thing that is quite important for us since the very beginning of the studio is this relationship between what is physical and what is digital. It's not one or the other, but for us it's more how we always kind of combine these two ingredients. And we are very used to start from physical models in our design workflows. And now we can take this whatever quick sketch models we do, bring them using our phones to our design tools, and then kind of visualize them very quickly through kind of the lens of different libraries that we may be selecting. And even more, trying to understand how these may have a direct impact in people's emotions. We've been quite focusing in studying people like Colin Ellard and other neuroscientists, trying to see how visual complexity has a direct effect into how people actually or people well-being while they are kind of walking around the cities, and we're trying to use some of these, let's say, ideas as parameters that we can control, particularly focusing at street level and what we call kind of the door scale. And imagine if you have something like a pinboard where you can kind of put it against something, and then you get like a virtual representation of that object or the three-dimensionality of that object. But it's not the object anymore. But you can actually now measure every single part of that system. Let's say you can measure kind of the length or any variance in the system, and we're applying those through the different kind of facades that are directly related to the passerbys. So from this kind of approach, we are taking first the data from 3D information, and we're turning that into kind of images that we can then reverse using AI, and then apply a few other kind of algorithms to make sure that we're understanding the levels of variation or deviations in the system, and also kind of the coefficient of variations and how basically dynamically this level of details and three-dimensionality can affect kind of our emotions. And with this, we're kind of developing our own tools that will very soon be released for everyone to actually use them and understand, based in neuroscience and using these technologies, how your own designs may be kind of scoring. And we've been running this kind of through several months now and scoring multiple buildings and kind of adding more information into this tool to make it more powerful. And just going back to kind of this idea of where AI can be really useful for us and for everyone, hopefully it's helping us get towards a more human-centered design. And that's where we want to kind of take things and use technology for. And with this, I'm going to end. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Pablo. That was another great presentation, a great way to end. If I could ask all our panelists to pop their cameras back on and open up their mics, we'll jump into some audience questions. So please do send those through. The first one that's come through today that I'd love to put to you is around, I'll just read it out as they intended it. The current shortfall in professionals skilled at merging digital innovation with traditional design poses a barrier, particularly noticeable in the UK. What strategies can we employ to facilitate this integration? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? If you disagree with the premise, that's also fine, but it would just be great to get your overall thoughts on it.
I don't think, it's certainly not my impression that there isn't the skill set to generate the imagery. I think, as I was saying before, that the skill is to know what's possible, and to I think AI is so powerful that it's believable. It's instantly believable, and so I use ChatGPT to generate. I asked it what is the ownership of Weston Williamson, and it came back with completely the wrong answer. That I knew what the answer was because I'm one of the owners, but it says it in such a convincing way, and I think that's the trouble. That somebody in Singapore or China would take it gospel, and it gets the information from everywhere, and it's so quick that it comes back with the answer, and it even tells you where it's got the answer from. But if it's wrong, and the same with the imagery, I think, it's easy to get the imagery wrong, and if you don't interrogate it and make sure that it's believable, I think in the hands of good designers, if we question the results, it will help us a lot. But if we don't, it's like a bad drawing. It looks convincing, but you can't actually build it.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I would just say a few words that I think that actually I don't agree with the statement. I think one of the first things that actually was mentioned when these tools started to come out and everyone used them, especially in the world of education, was that it actually opens up many possibilities for people from all over the world, or people that wouldn't have had access to a certain level of education before that now have access to these tools. So I think that actually the tools are there for everyone to use, and there is a spread of knowledge that is quite much more equally spread than maybe before.
I would say I would turn the question a little bit because we're talking about people are not equipped to use that. Adoption rates show exactly the opposite. And I wouldn't say they're not equipped in there, they're not technically capable of using them. I think that's not the problem. The problem is that they lack the domain expertise to understand what these tools are coming back with. And that if they lack the domain expertise to understand how well an image works, imagine where you're looking into an entire building, or whether a simulation that shows the performance of a building is correct, or whether an answer that you're getting is correct. Everybody's looking into these tools we're talking about zero shot models, but now I think we're going also into the zero question answers, where you're asking you're going to be asking a question, and whatever answer you get back, you're going to agree that this is it. Is the ultimate answer. And because you lack the domain knowledge, because you have not trained yourself to the domain knowledge, you won't be able to understand how right or wrong this answer is. And so these are still tools that require you to be an expert on doing certain things, and it will facilitate you on. Nobody would need to go through hoops and loops creating their own simulation engines to run like real-time analysis that we did in the past, because some of these things will be fast-tracked and democratized. But unless you understand what the simulation shows, you're in no better place than you were when you had to run it for like 30 hours before.
Absolutely. Pablo, did you have anything you wanted to add, or has it been covered?
Yeah, I think for me it's related to two things. So first, these are all models based in language. So the success of this technology is there. You know, it's so easy to interact with. That's the ultimate desire. You know, so I don't foresee a world where this is going to get, you know, ever more difficult. All the opposite. You know, it's just going to continue being easier and easier and easier to interact with. You know, and that shouldn't be detrimental to our critical thinking. Okay, and I think you know, it used to happen before, where like if you saw it on TV, it must be true. You know, and right, was it true? Not necessarily. Or do we really believe everything we read on Twitter? You know, we just have to make sure that, you know, while we are interacting with this technology, while we interact with any other human being, we also retain the amount of critical thinking that we should have. You know, I don't think what we cannot do is neglect that. You know, but it's not AI's fault in a way. You know, I think on the contrary, I think the as a technology, I think it's just going to get easier and easier to interact with.
Brilliant. I'm going to try and amalgamate a couple of questions here, so hopefully we can tick off a couple of people's at once. But there's been a few questions around AI and materials choices, specification, material performance, and how far along that journey we actually are. How much can AI support, you know, material specification for building performance in any number of ways, whether that be net zero or, you know, just, you know, general wear and tear of the building fabric. Is that something that's being looked into? Is it something that's being done effectively?
I mean, their applications are there that already do a lot of these things. And I think it ends up being on the how qualitative is the data that you have along the materials, how themselves and their specifications, how the specifications are actually in terms of like the wear and tear of a building. So are they compromised because the specs are not actually filling what is exactly happening on site because the material has not been used for so long. We have been certainly looking into our materials research library and creating some sort of capability using machine learning around some of these things. And again, the output is going to be as good as your data. Do the models exist to do that? Absolutely. Can you do it now? Yes.
I just add to that. There's also it is a helpful tool for writing specifications, actually, especially if you have to write them across different cultural uses. I mean, if you have to write them in an American style specification, you can use the tool quite helpfully to help you know what category you have to specify your particular materials in and so on. So that's, you know, on the kind of to redact the specification can be a helpful tool as well.
This is going to depend on the machine learning model you use on the back end. Some machine learning models are more prone to what they call hallucinations, and some people say lying, which is effectively filling the gaps. Some models are less so, but they need to be trained with particular parameters. So if somebody just gets a model and starts training it and say, oh, now translate it with these specifications, unless you are a domain expert or you know exactly what model you used and have retrained the model in relation to this particular type of language that you're using, you're not going to get a right answer back right now. Of course, that's going to change in like 2-3 years at most, but right now, no.
That actually sort of brings me to a question that I'm sure you guys all have your own views on, and some of these might be proprietary, but we've had quite a few questions come through asking around, are there any tools that you would sort of recommend for people starting on this journey that they could, you know, start looking into now? I know that some of you guys will be using tools that are specific to your organizations and things like that, but are there things that people can be getting on board with now?
Well, Midjourney is the one that's the most popular, isn't it? That I know of, which I mean, the possibilities of it and the prompts that you can use and the way you keep interrogating it and changing it seems to be, but that's for anybody wanting to start experimenting. That's probably the best starting point, I would have thought.
I'd add, I think today we're moving very much from actually just using Midjourney or to tools that actually have as you've shown in many of the examples, that have a relationship between the three-dimensional massing and the image generation, and they're tools that exist that are not built by your own office, but that exist out there, like LookX, for example, that does this today, that we test quite a bit. Animation tools that are, I mean, there's loads of tools coming out every day, that some better, some not, but some less, but there's quite a lot of free or not too expensive tools that can be tested, at least to get to a certain point. And I think we're really moving more and more to having tools that enable you to have a proprietary set of data that you embed and then use.
I think it's also important to understand what tools already have them as part of the package. So most of the people probably attending today are familiar with Photoshop. Photoshop already has it. Most of the people here may have access to a web browser. So Microsoft Edge also has it now. So you can use GPT there. I think these tools are just going to keep popping up in our lives, through most of the tools we are kind of currently using. I think it's always good to also try to dig slightly deeper into some of these tools to understand kind of the difference between them. And there are plenty of models that are open source now. So if you are into image kind of generation, try to install and run Stable Diffusion in your machine, ControlNet, so you can actually control it, and then use any of the open source GPT models and compare them. Ask the same question across them and compare the answers. I think it's really good to kind of use what is already available, but it's also important to kind of start understanding from the beginning, how these tools actually work.
I think before people start thinking of what things to use, they first need to think of bigger issues. Like it was mentioned, Midjourney was mentioned. Like anything you upload in Midjourney, you lose IP, which means that if somebody in your organization, if you don't have an AI policy and somebody uploads something confidential in Midjourney, it's game over and you're legally liable. Okay. So people don't understand basic things in these situations, and they need to first and foremost understand these things, and they need to understand what is their business case. We're seeing this shiny little thing and we say, oh, it's fantastic, I can write a prompt and I can get back an image. I don't think people realize that we're like, this thing came back up a year and a half ago. The possibilities are endless, and we keep talking in architecture about images and about language. And the first thing I would say is take a step back rather than saying, I'm going to use all these things. Okay, what is your business case? How can you use it in your office as a business case to augment your creativity, to fast track things, to automate things that you need? How can you use it actively as a connector? If you start using AI agents, for example, and simulate and be able to connect different APIs for workflow purposes. These are much more deep and interesting problems to solve, go beyond image making, are kind of in the root of how we work as architects. And the development of the technology for this thing is yet to come, is being developed, but it's not kind of a tool that is out there that you use. So I think before anybody jumps in and saying, I'm using Stable Diffusion and therefore I'm using AI in my organization, they need to step back and say, okay, with all these developments that are coming and with the things that we know for our organization, what are the things that we need to build as business cases? What do we need to start exploring, and in which areas, which are not necessarily the areas that we keep discussing in all these panels I'm in all the time, unfortunately.
Well, I would love to keep chatting to you guys all afternoon, but I've already stolen more of your time today than we allotted. So I'm so grateful for your generosity of knowledge and time, both today and in preparation for today. So I'd like to start off by thanking our 4 speakers. That's Martha, Pablo, Chris, and Natalie. All have done a fantastic job getting involved today. We're really appreciative. Also, thank you so much to our audience, and apologies again for the technical difficulties at the start of the session. It was a platform error that's now been, we hope, corrected permanently, so it should not be happening again. And I guess that's it from me. If you want to catch up on this session, rewatch it, pass it on. The on-demand session will be available in about an hour's time. We're just going to review it to make sure that the right version of it goes up, not the one that only ran for 8 minutes. So it might take a little bit longer this time than normal. But thank you all so much. There'll be a feedback survey that pops up at the conclusion here. So if you wouldn't mind giving us your thoughts, it'll help us shape future events. Thanks so much and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.